Well, good morning, folks. I think we're ready to get started, so I will now share my screen. Good morning. My name is Woody Hastings. I'm the Phase Out Polluting Fuels Program Manager for the Climate Center. Welcome to our webinar celebrating the success of California's community choice agencies. We'll also be talking about some of the challenges and opportunities CCAs are facing. Thank you for joining us this morning. First, I'd like to thank our generous sponsors, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, Calpine Energy Solutions, Peninsula Clean Energy, MCE, River City Bank, Sunrun, and Silicon Valley Clean Energy. We also thank our promotional partners, Actera, Clean Coalition, Civic Well, Climate Resolve, the Community Environmental Council, and Grid Alternatives. First, this month of May marks 10 years of Sonoma Clean Power service, so please join me in congratulating Sonoma Clean Power for 10 successful years. Their anniversary was the inspiration for this webinar. Between 2008 and 2014, the Climate Center worked to help initiate Sonoma Clean Power. Many people told us it would never work. We were also in a time when there was no choice about energy service providers, and PG&E was at a paltry 12% renewable energy. Fast forward to today, where the basic Sonoma Clean Power Clean Start service is 91% carbon-free, 50% renewable electricity, with an option for 100% renewable energy, which is geothermal and solar. For more about Sonoma Clean Power's first 10 years, we're going to be hearing from Geof Syphers shortly. But there's also a North Bay Business Journal interview with Geof Syphers, and Rob will be dropping that link into the chat for you that you can read at your own pleasure. The Climate Center's mission is to rapidly reduce polluting fuels at scale, starting in California. We work statewide with businesses, local governments, labor unions, and environmental justice leaders to deliver the equitable climate solutions that the science demands. Founded in 2001, the Climate Center has been a leader in making climate solutions a reality in California at speed and scale. We are a think tank, do tank, working to turn bold ideas into action for a climate-safe future. This is our CEO, Ellie Cohen, speaking at an event in Los Angeles. Our flagship campaign is Climate Safe California, aiming to get the state to adopt the policies needed to be doing its part in addressing the global climate crisis. And that means going beyond emission reductions and actually becoming a carbon dioxide sink. Not net zero emissions, but actually drawing down more CO2 than we emit. Based on what the science tells us, this is what we must do. There are 4 key pillars to the campaign: phasing out fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are the main drivers of the climate crisis. California can and must rapidly transition to clean, affordable, resilient, and safe energy. It's time to electrify. Let's power our homes, cars, trains, buses, and businesses with clean energy while ensuring no community is left behind. Next, we need to scale up natural carbon sequestration. Natural carbon sequestration solutions draw down past carbon pollution while also improving community health. California's farms, rangelands, forests, wetlands, and urban green spaces can be a part of the solution to the climate crisis. Third, we need to invest in community resilience. As climate extremes intensify, it's time for California to begin building the grid for the future. Clean, local, reliable energy and storage can help us avoid blackouts, reduce climate pollution, and protect our communities at the same time. We need to fund climate action. Delaying action is far more costly than investing in climate-friendly solutions. By investing in proven, cost-effective climate solutions and prioritizing communities on the front lines of climate disasters today, we will save lives and dollars down the line. Climate Safe California and all of the Climate Center's work is guided by these core principles. Following the latest science, we work to bring California's climate ambition in line with what the latest science says is necessary. Prioritizing climate justice, marginalized communities, Black, Brown, Latinx, Indigenous, and Asian people, as well as working class communities across race, are bearing the brunt of California's climate crisis. The fossil fuel economy prioritizes short-term profit over human health. Working together, we can ensure that all Californians enjoy equitable access to true climate solutions and the benefits of clean energy. Lastly, securing a just transition for workers. As we transition away from oil and gas and toward renewable energy, policymakers must ensure fossil fuel workers and their families aren't left behind. That means creating millions of family-sustaining jobs in clean energy, providing workforce training and job placement for workers in transition, and protecting workers' pensions and healthcare benefits. An equitable transition for oil and gas workers is affordable and achievable in California. Climate crisis is hitting harder and faster than scientists predicted even a few years ago. The UN has warned we are witnessing a code red for humanity. Several key tipping points are underway that indicate that we are running out of time, including loss of Arctic sea ice, thawing of permafrost, die-offs of coral reefs, and more. California has become a hotspot for the climate crisis, where we are experiencing weather whiplash, flipping from mega droughts to atmospheric rivers, unprecedented wildfire, and extreme heat episodes. These extremes have effects on public safety and health, including mental health. Fossil fuel companies have spent $77.5 million to lobby lawmakers in California between 2018 and 2022. And last year alone, the Western States Petroleum Association and other oil and gas lobbyists spent a record $27 million lobbying in California. Oil and gas lobbyists are pushing carbon capture and sequestration and other climate false solutions and work to block just about every climate and clean energy bill that is introduced. California needs to step up. Other countries are setting more ambitious greenhouse reduction goals than California has over the last few years. These are just a few examples. A little bit more about the Climate Center's impact on nature-based sequestration. We mobilized more than 80 organizations to help pass AB 1757 to scale up proven, cost-effective nature-based sequestration. On clean energy microgrids, due to our efforts, the state launched a new Energy Commission program for clean, resilient microgrids and energy storage across the state. We also helped secure nearly $3 billion in new funding for small-scale solar and battery storage. When California leads, others follow. We know that many states and countries look to California for leadership on the climate crisis, so it is important that we actually lead. Here are 3 examples of climate initiatives where California has adopted that have spurred action beyond California. Climate Safe California campaign calls on the state of California to enact the following solutions. Commit to 80% below 1990 levels of greenhouse gas emissions and net negative emissions as soon as possible, accelerating existing state policies. Secure a just transition for workers and their families and communities who depend on fossil fuel industries, ensuring their economic well-being, and closing the climate gap when enacting climate policies to ensure lower-income communities and communities of color are no longer disproportionately harmed by the health and economic consequences of fossil fuel development, production, and use, and have equitable access to climate-friendly solutions. Climate Safe California campaign calls on the state of California. Hold on. So the top priorities for 2024 are to end state subsidies and tax breaks to the oil and gas industry, divest state employee and teacher retirement funds from fossil fuels, mandate bidirectional charging in electric passenger vehicles and school buses, and fund regional hubs to help farmers and ranchers implement climate-friendly soil and habitat management at speed and scale, and defend historic climate investments in a time of significant budget shortfall. Bottom line, California must lead on climate once again at the speed and scale required. Our communities deserve accelerated climate solutions. So this is your opportunity your invitation to endorse Climate Safe California. The campaign has more than 2,000 individual endorsements to date from legislators, business owners, non-governmental organizations, and activists. If we can do this in California, the fourth largest economy in the world and a major oil and gas producing state, we can do it anywhere. Please endorse today. Rob is dropping the link into the chat. In addition, another way you can take action today is we are in a time of budget deficit. The legislature and the governor have until June 15th to approve a budget. Cuts to the climate budget are in the billions of dollars, while the state is still providing subsidies to the oil and gas industry. The Equitable Building Decarbonization Program, Zero Emission Vehicle Programs, and the Displaced Oil and Gas Workers Program are all on the chopping block. So we're making it easy for you to tell your state leaders to eliminate fossil fuel subsidies to free up dollars for climate priorities. Use the link that Rob is dropping into the chat to take action. Thank you very much. Now, just a bit about community choice aggregation, the topic of today's webinar, before I hand things off to Geof Syphers. CCAs, for folks that are not fully aware, are local not-for-profit agencies created by state law that procure electricity on behalf of their customers and that can offer a wide variety of energy programs to help save on costs and to switch to cleaner alternatives. The Poles and Wires utility continues to deliver electricity, and you, the customer, have more choices. The Climate Center played a leading role beginning in 2005 to help establish Sonoma Clean Power and other community choice agencies in California. There are now about 24 CCAs in California serving about 15 million customers. This is the launch photo from May 1st, 2014, a little over 10 years ago, the very first day of Sonoma Clean Power service. Lastly, if you'd like to learn more, this is a 12-minute overview video of the origins and impact of community choice throughout California, produced by the California Community Choice Association. It features Assemblymember Carol Migden, the author of AB 117 of 2002, that got the CCA ball rolling. Rob, again, is dropping the link into the chat, and now I'd like to hand it off to Geof Syphers, CEO of Sonoma Clean Power. Take it away, Geof.
Yeah, thank you, Woody. And a huge thank you to the Climate Center for all the work you've done in our formation process and even long before to get all the climate action plans adopted that led to the courage to form a CCA and then to expand things statewide. So big thank you. I think for today, I do want to highlight some of what we've achieved in the last decade. And I also want to mention a little bit about where I think community choice is going and certainly where Sonoma Clean Power is going. So to do that, I will share my screen and let me know if that's coming up for people. Is that working for folks?
Looks good.
All right. So I think where I want to begin is where Woody ended, which is in 2002, our state legislature, and led by Carol Migden, saw an opportunity coming out of the energy crisis. So I'm going back 2 decades for this, to deal with things like the Enron crisis and PG&E's bankruptcy by putting the public in charge. And so the origin of Assembly Bill 117 is important to remember because we still need to deliver on that promise. There's more work to do, but putting the public in the middle of energy markets and transactions does increase transparency pretty dramatically and lower a lot of the risks that we saw in that energy crisis, but we haven't eliminated them yet. And so what I'll point out in the picture that Woody already shared is the guy in the back with his arms up is Woody. So if you didn't catch that the first time around, so he's prominent in this one. So we've been able to do things at scale in a way that's pretty extraordinary. So this is one of our first construction projects. It's a wind power facility. And if you've never been to a wind turbine up close, they're pretty giant. And this gives you a perspective. Workers have to tie down the blades when they're on the ground in order to prevent the wind from carrying them away. And the point I want to make about this is community choice is a banking tool. Because we have revenues from customers that tend to get paid, it means we have credit. So 3 months after we started service, we signed a contract that was a $200 million solar project. and we had no assets. And that's only possible because of the way the default service works. And so one of the things I want to point out is being able to do important climate work at scale in the billions now is possible because of the structure of community choice. And in fact, statewide now, Sonoma Clean Power and all our 24 sister agencies have constructed over 14,000 megawatts of new clean power resources, which is more than 6 Diablo Canyon nuclear power plants of clean energy. So we're doing things at scale, and we're also really connected to our community. So this is a small scale local solar project in Petaluma in Sonoma County that was built on a dairy farm that was struggling to essentially keep the land. And so we're paying rent. And this came about as a partnership. So this was a conversation because we know folks in our community and we're close to them. We're able to set up small scale solutions as well. And that's a real hallmark, I think, of community choice. So we also pivoted pretty early. So this was news in 2014 that power providers should care about cars. That was novel. And so we didn't invent the idea of power providers getting into electric cars, but we brought it from Boulder, Colorado. They had a program that negotiated bulk discounts for electric vehicles. And we ran that for several years here and got really much more into the decarbonization of transport. So this is one of our 24 community organizations that got a vehicle, an electric vehicle, with a significant grant from Sonoma Clean Power. And I think that kind of evolution from just renewable power development to electric transportation to career technical development in schools, kids learning how to build electric vehicles in high schools, to pivoting again. Cars aren't the answer. In fact, technology is never the answer. But thinking about transportation more broadly and helping, we ran a low-income program that got folks onto electric bikes. And I think it's that fast pace of evolution and learning that is another hallmark of CCAs. So we've got a banking function for doing things at scale, but we've really also got this ability to turn on a dime. So, you know, when the 2017 firestorm ran through our territory and burned down almost 6,000 homes, 90 days later, we stood up a program to rebuild the homes that were all electric, renewably powered, with electric vehicle charging stations, and with a heavy grant that we had partnered with PG&E and the Bay Area Air Quality Management District to provide. And it's unheard of to stand up a massive scale program with tens of millions of dollars of support in 90 days. But CCAs can do that, and I think that's like such a critical thing. We also partnered with the California Energy Commission to build a customer center that is dedicated toward helping people lower their energy bills. This is the demonstration kitchen area where we have professional chefs teaching the public or other chefs how to use induction cooking. We have loaner programs that lend out single induction cooktops so people can try it. The center is a place where you can learn all about heat pumps. You can learn about how to renovate a home and get the real facts. There's a lot of myths out there about electrification, and a lot of them don't go our way. Like, one of the myths is that you'll save money, and the truth is you probably won't. Your bill will probably go up. And that hard reality is something we're having to face with courage. And I think that's another facet of community choice, is that we can be honest brokers. We can represent the public. We do want people to electrify, but we don't want to hide the fact that it tends to cost a lot of money to do it if you do the whole house. And it also tends to drive your bill up. And I really think part of our role in society is to bring that hard problem out into the whole world and solve it and figure out solutions. So we're beginning to make progress on that front, but we're not done yet. So a lot of what we're doing is starting with the easy stuff. So heat pump water heaters tend to be pretty cost effective. So we're pushing that harder. we're really encouraging wealthy people to do this first because they have the money to afford to make a mistake. And we're also funding low-income housing providers like Burbank Housing here in Sonoma County to electrify buildings that they were already interested in doing that. So if they already had that appetite and that ability. So we're in the community. This is really something that the big utilities haven't had in decades, which is we are in the grocery stores and cafes and real estate offices and retirement homes and everywhere. Every single day, there are Sonoma Clean Power staff out speaking about something, whether it's in the Pride Parade this Saturday, whether it's on how to insulate your doors and windows, whether it's how to understand time of use rates, how to get the most out of your solar system. All those community engagement points are really kind of a key thing. This is a shot of the back of the crowd that were the actors, directors, writers, and camera folks for creating a telenovela series. We actually now have 2 seasons of this. This is by people who are native Spanish speakers for people who are native Spanish speakers, and there's no English translation. And this was an idea that a customer brought to us to teach about energy efficiency and electrification, but do it for a group of people who want to be connected in this medium. And these kind of ideas are really fun to implement, and I think it's part of the creativity of community choice. So here's a little 100% renewable microgrid that we encouraged and kind of leaned on PG&E to build for Pepperwood Preserve. It's their first 100% renewable system anywhere. And then I think I'll spend my last couple minutes on Evergreen. So Evergreen is the United States' first full-time renewable service, meaning every single minute of the year is 100% renewable. And we stood that up in 2014 as a policy move to try and demonstrate where California would have to get. And the Lighthouse here was one of our early subscribers to this service. But what it does is it utilizes resources that are around the clock renewable. So we had to add geothermal into the mix on top of solar and battery storage. And increasingly, we're working to diversify that mix in order to not spend all our money on natural gas-fired power plants to keep the lights on. The dirty secret is every other 100% renewable program in the United States so far still relies on natural gas power to keep the lights on all winter and at night. And what we're trying to demonstrate with this is how do you actually solve the problem? And the problem is not just about the climate, it's also about money. Because if we have a 100% renewable grid minus a few hours, then we've paid for that. But we also have a 100% fossil grid, which is standing there ready to run when none of the renewables are available. And that is wicked expensive. So one of the things that we're fighting for is from a ratepayer standpoint, we have to learn how to actually close and permanently retire the natural gas power plants. So let's see, Woody, do I have 1 more minute?
Yes, you do.
I'll take it. So one other thing that's coming in the future is virtual power plants are going to scale up. So Grid Savvy is our big one. We have almost 10,000 homes now that have registered and are turning off resources on a text message or an email or a phone call, whatever they have, we'll provide. And we're seeing this as a no technology solution, given that most people have either a phone or email. And this is proving to be really effective. So I'd encourage anybody to take a look at our Grid Savvy program if you want to learn more about it. And with that, I will close out by sharing some fun community engagement photos with working in food banks and our secret sauce. We have puppies at work every day. And I'll turn it back to you. Thanks, Woody.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeff. Really appreciate all that good info. For our next presenter, Joanne O'Neill, I would like to invite Julian Gatachieca to introduce Joanne Julianne works with Calpine. He's the director of CCA market development for Calpine, and Calpine has been an instrumental, highly important, supportive entity for community choice agencies since the very beginning, doing a lot of the back office work, a lot of the support for community choice, call centers and data management, and all kinds of support for CCA. So appreciate you being here, Julianne, to introduce Joanne. So take it away.
Thank you, Rudy. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. Thank you, Rudy, for the introduction and everything that the Climate Center does for our communities. It is greatly appreciated. Also, once again, congratulations to Geof and the SCP team for your impressive and inspiring achievements. Everything that you do to lead the charge and show how innovative CCAs are is greatly appreciated, and it's inspiring. We've been your partner since your launch, and it has been a great learning experience on our side. So as Woody was saying, Calpine it's a very large company. It's a power producer, first of all. In fact, I think Geof actually showed one of our geothermal power plants in California, but we also provide data management services to CCAs. We actually work with 21 out of the 24 CCAs in California, and we help them ingest millions of records from their utility every day. This means that our team receive, validate, correct, and enhance the data that CCAs need to run their operation, from energy procurement and settlements to program administration and other customer services. And because, as you can guess, data is the foundation of everything we do in this industry, Calpine continuously invests in its infrastructure and the services that we provide our clients. And this is with the same attitude that we recently moved into demand-side management services. Those services allow our CCA clients to better understand their customer base, but also better understand the load drivers and establish local markets that enables those CCAs to work with a plethora of vendors of energy efficiency, VPP, demand response, EV management services at the same time, while limiting the financial exposure to program cost. Demand-side management, for those of you who don't know, it refers really to load flexibility. It is becoming increasingly important as we enhance the penetration of renewable energy into the grid. This is a crucial element of the decarbonization effort, as you've heard, and we see more and more of our CCA clients actively investing important resources in this field. So we're genuinely excited to support this effort, and I'm proud to say that we've actually rolled out a couple of marketplaces already saving millions of dollars to CCA customers, including SCP customers. But to wrap it up, selfishly, I'm working in this field, which allows me to engage with extraordinary individuals like Joanne. Joanne is the Director of Customer Programs at Clean Power Alliance, where she oversees a range of programs promoting electric vehicle, building and demand response, energy resiliency, and low-income community solar. She has over 15 years of experience delivering customer programs within the utilities and consulting space, including more than 5 years leading California operations at Clear Results, which is the largest provider of emission reducing energy solutions across North America. She's worked for PG&E for 10 years, and while she was at PG&E, Joanne designed and implemented numerous customer programs and led the strategy for time of use rate implementation. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Joanne, who will share more about the terrific programs that she and her team are working on.
Great. Thank you, Julian. And I'll get my slides up, although fair warning, I shouldn't go after Geof. I do not have tacos or puppies in my slides, so apologies in advance for that. I'll learn for the next time. Let me make sure we got this going. And if somebody could confirm once they see the slides, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, we
Yep,
can.
see them.
All right, we're in business. Well, again, thank you. My name is Joanne O'Neill. I'm the Director of Customer Programs at Clean Power Alliance, and I'm really excited to be here today and to talk, to build off of what Geof was describing as, the role of community choice aggregators, and really take that to the next level that is probably a little bit more visible to customers in our communities, and that's our programs that we run. And so I'll do the quick spiel about who we are, and then dive into how we're looking at our customer programs and spotlight a few that I think are particularly interesting. So Clean Power Alliance, or CPA, is the largest community choice aggregator in California, and we serve over 3 million residents and business customers in the 35 little lightning bolt communities you see there on the map. And one of the things that we're really proud of, in addition to having the benefit of serving those customers across Los Angeles and Ventura counties, is that last year the National Renewable Energy Lab, NREL, gave us a designation as a utility providing the most customers with 100% renewable energy in the nation. And so, again, the role of CCAs and leading the charge, not just in California, but nationally, is pretty impactful. And, as a not-for-profit joint powers authority, we take the revenue that we do make, in addition to what's needed to run the operations, and reinvest that in our communities. And so most of what I'm going to be covering today comes from those investments within our community that the CPA is making. So back in 2020, our board adopted what we call the Local Programs for a Clean Energy Future. And what that is really a strategic plan to guide our efforts and to direct them into how we design our programs and run our programs. And the goal for us here is really to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, support grid management, which is of increasing importance, help support climate resiliency, and then ultimately help our customers manage their energy and save money. And so those are some of the goals that you'll see as a theme throughout the various programs I'm going to talk about. But what I think is really interesting is that there was once a time in the customer programs landscape where if you did one of those things well, then you're probably in a good spot. But more and more, we're seeing the interconnection across various types of end uses, types of technologies, and types of goals, and we're trying to figure out ways to serve those all. And so we bucket them into these three areas. The first is resilience and grid management. And we'll talk a little bit about our power response and power ready programs shortly, but we're also in the process of launching a managed charging program to help leverage electric vehicle charging to provide additional resources to the grid by making sure that they're being charged during time of abundant solar energy. The second area is building and transportation electrification. We'll talk about our Energized Communities program shortly, but we also offer a REACH code program that helps our member agencies adopt codes to advance new construction and existing building codes around electrification. And then finally, local procurement. And so, what we're really trying to do here is bring in programs like our Power Share that offers an opportunity for communities to build local solar projects and have that energy go to the customers in that region. We also have our Sun Storage Rebate Program, which offers incentives for battery storage paired with solar. So a wide range of items, but really wanted to focus in on three today that I think demonstrate that holistic approach that I mentioned, and really how we're trying to be receptive to not only what we're seeing in the market in terms of technology, what we're seeing as challenges, such as the need for resiliency and grid management, but also be responsive to what our customers and our communities are asking for. So the first item I wanted to share is one of our actually longest standing programs, our Power Response program. And this was really designed and similar to some other programs. I think Geof mentioned Grid Savvy, which was a great example for us to build upon, actually, but leverages our customers' distributed energy resources and pools those together into a virtual power plant. So this program is what we call a market-facing demand response program. So that means that we are calling events based off of times when there's grid strain, and then pooling those resources and actually selling them in the CAISO market, which allows us to pull in revenues that we can then reinvest in the incentives and program administration. And so, this program is really designed to serve all of our customers in a different way. And so we have 4 pathways available to do that. The first is our Smart Home program. And so this is an automated demand response program, which means that customers who have devices that are capable of receiving demand response signals, such as smart thermostats, batteries, or EV chargers, can participate. And during those events, we send those automated signals to the devices to reduce their usage. So that's an easy way for customers to not have to think about it and to be part of that solution. However, we know that not everyone has access to connected devices or chooses to use them. And so we wanted to make sure that we had another option that was available, and that is our home program, which leverages messaging and behavioral signals to customers, telling them of an event and asking them to reduce their usage, whether that's ratcheting down their thermostat or deferring the use of major appliances. And then we actually pay customers based off of that reduction. And so it's a great way for customers to really be part of the solution and to have a lot of flexibility in that. The third option is our multifamily communities program. And so this is an opportunity for us to engage with property managers to help tenants and renters, which is an area that is particularly left out in a lot of programs. Finally, our commercial leaders program. And this is an area where our member agencies and non-residential customers can participate both from an automated or behavioral perspective and really have a customized approach to planning for their demand response, and then also getting paid based off of what they deliver. I'm proud to say on the right, you can see some of the program impacts to date. We're actually in the process of doing a pretty big kind of reimagination of how the customer enrollment process works that we're very confident will set us up for success and an even bigger scale going into the summer here. Pivoting a little bit, I want to talk about our energized communities pathways for electrification. And so I want to highlight the fleet electrification component of this, but it also provides building electrification and community EV charging. And the idea here is that we want to support our member agencies advance and accelerate their sustainability plans. We know that local governments are not only, can our investment in them reduce their costs that they can then invest in their communities, but local governments really can and should be leaders in accelerating the transition. And so by working with them, we can really demonstrate that collective leadership. And so this program provides support for fleet electrification. So that's everything from planning to implementation. But what I think is really interesting is we're not just kind of walking away once the vehicles are there and plugged in, because as you know, the electrification of our transportation could increase load significantly. And so it's really important for us to offer an opportunity for those participants to manage their charging after it's purchased, not only to serve as a grid resource, maybe potentially in the future, and provide additional export into the grid, but also to help with their operational costs and make sure that they are able to be as efficient as possible. And so this is an area that is continuing to expand, and we're looking forward to that being successful and reporting out more in terms of results. Finally, and also with our local governments, we have our Power Ready program. And so this is an opportunity to provide our member agencies critical facilities with no-cost clean energy backup systems. And so these are things like fire stations, city hall, libraries that serve as cooling centers or emergency operation centers, because we're seeing unfortunately the issues around electric reliability are increasing, right, with wildfires, heats, public safety power shutoffs. Actually, in our territory alone in 2019, we had over 400 power safety shutoffs, and that's really impactful to our communities, especially who have these critical functions that need to be served. And so unfortunately, a lot of them are turning to diesel generators as a way to continue to support those critical functions. And that obviously has impacts from a greenhouse gas emissions perspective and a local air quality perspective. And we really wanted to provide an alternative to that. And so these clean energy systems will include solar and battery that can be islanded in case of those outages. And, while resiliency is one of the key drivers there and supporting that critical load during an outage, we also don't want to have these really expensive systems just sitting there idle, waiting for something bad to happen. And so while we reserve a portion of that for resiliency, we're also using the remainder for ongoing grid energy optimization and grid management. So that means that battery is discharging clean energy on a daily basis, and that helps provide lower costs for the customers, a grid asset for CPA, and helps reduce those operating costs that then we can reinvest in our community or provide back to our customers in reduced rates. So really, again, just wanted to highlight these 3 examples as ways that we're reimagining kind of traditional engagement and making sure that everything we do is really kind of a win-win-win, and something that can support not just the grid and advancing climate resiliency and adaptation, but can be something that really is valuable to our customers and our communities. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Woody. And I think we'll hold questions for the end. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Joanne. And yeah, the resilience needs in many of our communities, so important with the unprecedented wildfires we've had, and that image there, the Santa Monica Mountains, and remembering the Woolsey fire. And we've got another dry season coming up. So be prepared out there. Thank you very much. Very interesting. And I'm going to probably want to ask you some questions later about any challenges and problems and barriers, obstruction that you've had for doing those kinds of programs, because I know there can be some. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our 3rd and final presenter, Ana Rosa Rizzo-Santino, who's the Environmental Justice Representative for the Community Choice Agency Environmental Justice and Workforce Alliance Coordinating Team. CCAs from the very beginning have been on a constant sort of, how can we improve? How can we do better? How can we improve over the IOUs? How can we do better than previous CCA efforts? And this is maybe a presentation that focuses on, how can we do better on workforce and environmental justice standards. So I understand that Stacy, you will be sharing Ana Rosa's slides. Is that correct? Go ahead. And Ana Rosa, without any further ado, please take it away.
Hello. Try that again. Is this better? Okay.
That works.
Well, in case you were not awake before, you're awake now. Good morning. Buenos dias. My name is Ana Rosa Rizzo-Santino, and I'd like to acknowledge that I'm zooming in from Chumash lands, also known as Oxnard, or the Central Coast of California. And, I think it's really important to, because that was a mouthful, right? Our organization. So to put it in plain language, we are an alliance of labor, environmental justice, and climate advocates that are committed to securing strong workforce and environmental justice standards at California, so basically at CCAs. Now that everyone has explained the acronym, I probably don't have to explain it every time. So yeah, next slide, please. So to go into the issue here, community choice agencies are and will be responsible for most of California's current and future clean energy projects. California still needs to build 175 gigawatts of clean energy to meet our SB 100 goal by the year 2050. If we are going to do these projects, we should do them right. So PG&E and other investor-owned utilities have an impeccable track record of strong workforce standards for nearly all utility-owned and contracted energy projects. On the other hand, California CCAs generally lack consistent policies and practices with respect to project, workforce, and environmental justice standards. More importantly, CCAs have an opportunity and obligation to ensure that workers and communities, particularly environmental justice workers and communities, are protected and supported through this energy transition. We must ensure that the green economy does not perpetuate poverty, but uplifts communities. And our alliance is committed to fostering a just economy within the green economy. Next slide. So these three are the key tenets of our approach. So we have these be bottom-up solutions where our vision is actually a collaborative vision that's bottom-up solutions created by labor unions, community organizations, and environmental organizations. With this approach, we make clear signals because we have to make these projects successful by making sure that we send clear signals to the market about what great projects look like and have developers respond with projects that uplift workers, minimize environmental impacts, and have meaningful engagement with communities, right? Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that this is sustainable. And in order to do this, we have to put people at the center of it. So our responsibility is that we have an obligation to the workers and communities that are hosting our clean energy projects. Next slide. So this is just a little bit of the political landscape that we've been dealing with. And, you know, so far what we've been seeing, unfortunately, is that leaving workers and communities behind results in political opposition to clean energy projects and climate leadership. So with this, the CCAs have an opportunity to build a strong political coalition to slow and stop the continuous attacks and help restore California to its position as a global climate leader. And this is just a brief timeline of the history of relentless attacks on CCAs. You know, back in 2010, there was Prop 16, 2011, AB 976, 2014, AB 2145, 2015, SB 286, 2018, CPUC PCIA alternate decision. In 2020, there was an Equitable Energy Choice AstroTurf, and then in 2022, SB 1287 CCA bonding requirements. Next slide. Okay, so this shows the picture of where we're at and where we need to go. Right now, we have 30 gigawatts, and we need to be able to get to 133. So that means that we have to triple solar and wind build rates. We have to have battery storage build rates need to increase 8-fold. And so really, this is a very practical approach. Not only is it the right thing to do, but it's practical. Energy procurement is the CCA's primary responsibility. CCAs will likely be responsibility for most of the future energy procurement in California. So again, we need lots more energy, a scalable, skilled workforce to build it, and partnerships with the communities that host the projects. And this is a timeline of kind of where we've been and where we're going. I've been here pretty much since the inception of when we started this. So victories from 2021 to last year of 2023, Clean Power SF or San Francisco PUC, the Peninsula Clean Energy Phase 1, Central Coast Community Energy, and Ava Community Energy, which is probably the strongest standards that we have developed to date. 2024 current campaigns that we have going on right now, Sonoma Clean Power, Peninsula Clean Energy is in Phase 2, San Jose Clean Energy, and Silicon Valley Clean Energy. And our 2025 future campaigns, we're looking at Valley Clean Energy and Redwood Coast Energy Authority. And these are the logos of those different entities. And again, we're not doing this by ourselves. This is a very broad coalition and alliance of support, and it's continuing to grow. So we have over 40. So to go through these, we have Let's Green California, we have Slow Climate Coalition, we have the Sierra Club, Climate Center, and the list goes on and on. And so I want to thank the other presenters. I want to thank you all for being here today. It's a Herculean effort that we're all going through to make this feasible and sustainable. So yeah, I'm open to any questions, and I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Ana Rosa. Appreciate that. And this is the time I meant to mention it earlier that if you have questions, please don't waste any time in posting them in the chat or the Q&A. There's a Q&A box there as well. I think either one is fine. I think I'd like to start off with a question for you, Ana Rosa. In the course of working with the CCAs that you did succeed in having them adopt standards, what were some of the what were some of the sort of challenges to them doing that, or reasons why they might have hesitated? And can you talk about what it was that would enable them to eventually decide to adopt the standards? Can you go into that in a little more detail?
Sure. Oh, sorry, having audio issues again. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
So I think part of the main issue is that they thought that these were mandates. And so to be clear, these are not mandates. So the fact that they are policies that are clear signals to the market made it much more feasible for these CCAs to sign on. Originally, when they thought they were mandates, some folks were kind of skittish about it. So that's really what made it more feasible.
Thank you, and thanks for the succinct answer. And maybe I'll pivot to Geof and Joanne and ask you to date what if you can share anything about current practices relative to your CCA itself or to counterparties that you work with. Maybe Joanne, let's start with you. Is CPA engaged at all on looking at adopting standards, not mandate?
Yeah, great question. And thank you, Ana Rosa, for all the work that you and your team are doing in this area. So we already do have integrated into our procurement process a preference for projects that are in our territory that prioritize workforce development and provide benefits to disadvantaged communities, as well as show a high level of environmental stewardship. So those criteria are part of every evaluation that we do. And we're also, in addition to that formal process, we also do a lot of work in reinvesting in workforce development and scholarships and other activities to make sure that there's local workforce enabled to do this work.
How about you,
If
Geof?
I add on, so
Please.
so for Sonoma Clean Power, one of the things I'm really proud of is over the last couple of years, thanks to Ana Rosa and others, we have been having a dialogue at our joint procurement agency called CC Power. So that's where we do really large scale procurement of things like geothermal and long duration battery storage and things like that about this question. And one of the actions that agency took was to direct all of its members to go and review 3CE, San Francisco, and AVA's policies and take back lessons to our own boards and make recommendations about whether or not a policy should be adopted. And so that process is underway, and I see us kind of heading in that direction. More significantly, even than a policy, I think, community choice pulls the decision-making authority for power sources away from a very complex, extremely expensive process at the CPUC and in for-profit utilities who are, let's be honest, exclusively focused on making profit. And it puts it in the hands of local elected officials and that are on the ground in the community. And that very nature of the setup of community choice is fundamentally about empowering communities. And so I think what we're trying to do with a policy is formalize that and codify it and send the signals to the market, to Ana Rosa's point, that are clear. But I think I don't want to lose sight of the fact that the existence of a CCA is a community equity move. Like that's its purpose. And if we're not delivering on that promise, then we shouldn't exist.
Oops, you just muted. I think you said you said then and then you dropped off.
Then we shouldn't exist if we're not delivering on that promise.
Right on. Yeah, and that was one of the reasons why the Climate Center was so interested in community choice in the first place. It takes what is really a private thing where you can't knock on the door of a PG&E or SoCal Edison board meeting and give them your opinion, but you can go to a community choice agency, governing board meeting or community advisory council meeting and weigh in and let them know these are open to the public. So there's a sort of inherent energy democracy component built into community choice by its very nature as public agencies. So that is an important point to note. And I think that the efforts of the Alliance are for really making sure that that the CCAs adopt the highest standards possible, so that to avoid the black eyes that can come with underperforming, especially as compared to the IOUs. Okay, I want to pivot to some different questions here. And one of the ones we had early on, this is sort of a different category for Geof and or Joanne. As a lot of folks know, the Climate Center is very interested in electric vehicle grid integration. Investment utilities have started proposing vehicle to grid tariffs. For example, Southern California Edison has proposed a tariff currently pending that would pay 50 cents per kilowatt hour during summer evenings between 6 and 9 p.m., meaning a payment to people who are willing to allow the utility to take some of their EV power for 58 cents a kilowatt hour. Are you aware of any CCAs that are working on a similar vehicle to grid tariff? That's for either Joanne or Geof.
Yeah, I can take the first crack at that. And just in general, we're tracking those developments very closely and working. We collaborate a lot with Edison on various pilots and rate initiatives. One of the things that we're working on or exploring currently is not necessarily a vehicle to grid rate, but really more of just how do we better support our electric vehicle drivers. And so we're exploring rate options and pilots that would better incentivize EV charging, and particularly during the day when we have abundance of renewable energy. And so that's something that we're actively, evaluating from the rate side. And then I also mentioned our managed charging program that we're evaluating, and how do we also provide incentives, beyond just the rate structure to help customers navigate this and give them the tools to be successful. Because we do see, we've done a lot of research and around the projected load growth associated with electric vehicles, and it's significant, especially, and it could be very negatively impactful to the cost to deliver if that charging all happens during peak times. And so the more we can do to manage the time of day it's people are charging, and then, as you mentioned, discharging, the better off I think all of us will be. So definitely an area of interest.
Yeah.
Geof, anything to add,
Piggyback.
Geof?
So Joanne hit a lot of the most important points. So we now have a culture where we've trained everybody to start charging at 11 p.m. And that is the dirtiest time of day to charge your car. It is also cheap. So we have the wrong price signals. So we have to change rates to have rates coincide better with emissions. But the grid is almost entirely fossil at 11 p.m. And the grid is struggling to figure out what to do with all the solar power at noon. We have a solution. It's called workplace charging. And one of the experiments we're running right now is we have a parking lot at our business office where all the charging is only available between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. So it is peak solar hour charging only. And it turns out, we ran the numbers, we could give away free charging for 10 years before we broke even on the cost of the installation. And the reason why is, if you don't have a charge system to get into the parking lot, like a credit card system for the chargers for employees, you don't need a $5,000 charging station. You can install a $400 charging station. And so you can dramatically lower the cost of construction. And instead of subsidizing construction and a subscription to a third party, you can give away fuel, or you can subsidize the fuel. And so when we're thinking about this problem, I'm trying to think about it not so much only as grid reliability, but as how do you bolster the solar industry? Because right now, rooftop solar is declining in value really dramatically. We need more loads in the middle of the day that are beneficial. And one of the easiest ones to switch over is electric cars. And the second easiest is heat pump water heaters, because those can be permanently shifted. So one of the things that we're doing is trying to make that permanent shift. So how do you have more workplace charging? How do you have more water heating in the middle of the day?
Thank you. We have a question from an attendee, Lokalani Devon, to this one's to Joanne, but I think Geof, you might want to also tag onto this one. In collaborations with local government agencies, have there been efforts to enact building code regulations that require developers to incorporate clean energy systems in new construction, or maybe make them, technology ready or something like that? Are there collaborations with your member jurisdictions is really the core of the question, I guess, for the buildings that might be permitted. Joanne, let's start with you.
Yeah, great question. So I mentioned our Reach Code program earlier. And so, what we're trying to do there is work with our local jurisdictions to pass codes that advance both new construction and existing buildings. Actually, the California, not to get too in the weeds, but the California code, building code, is actually fairly advanced and is very supportive of, as you mentioned, kind of that the clean energy and being prepared for electric vehicles. And so that typically is not the focus, since that is already kind of built in. But where we do see, trying to advance, how the electrification of various end uses. One of the things we're really focusing on is, how do we use greenhouse gas emissions as kind of the metric to drive our new construction towards. But what I think is even more interesting, because new construction is continuing and is important, but really, how do we address those existing buildings and all that infrastructure that's already out and won't be impacted by those codes? And so that's been a really exciting area. We're piloting with 3 communities currently how to implement existing building standards to try to address, renovating those as well, and making sure that they're part of the solution.
Seems like, as usual, Joanna's hit most of the key points. I'll add, I think, so I agree that California's building codes and, frankly, policy are already pretty forward-leaning, but all that only affects new construction. And so the real frontier is the folks who are renting homes that were built in the 60s and 70s that were pre-energy code, and they are spending $600 to $700 a month on their energy bill, not $100 a month, like people in a new home who have super energy efficient appliances. So some of the things we're doing with that is partnering with NGOs to do home retrofits, to do low-income free solar arrays. We have a toolkit in every library. We have a bunch of them, and you can check them out. And it has all kinds of equipment to renovate your home and seal the leaks, put in LED light bulbs, change out your shower heads, all the rest. That's a very popular item in our library system, and it's one of the most affordable programs we operate. So things like that, I think, are starting to hit on that really difficult segment of homes where people are renting. Very challenging to do a major renovation if you're a renter, and also have insanely high energy bills. There's a huge equity problem where the wealthiest people actually pay the least because they're living in the best homes. So, like, this is a serious challenge, and we have not solved it, but we're working on it.
So what you just said just reminded me of a question that I had around aggregation of projects, meaning, looking at trying to do some of these energy efficiency and or renewables application projects at the neighborhood scale, particularly in lower income communities. I know Recurve is doing some work on that. Have your CCAs looked at that at all?
Yes, absolutely. So we actually have a program called Empower that has identified a dozen communities that are target communities for people who have very little to any representation in the power systems, whether it's elected officials or whether it's wealth or whether it's lobbyists in Sacramento. And so those are communities that we are embarking on a decade-long journey to listen and learn and provide services to. And a big part of that is bringing the money, the assistance, the grants, the support that they might need for all their kinds of renovations, additions, all that kind of work. So that's a very long game process, but I'm excited about it because it's already over the last 2 years has been informing our program design for everybody. That's where we got the idea of not just having text alerts for our virtual power plant, but also having a phone call option for people who have no cell signal or no cell phone, as an example.
And Joanne, any plans for neighborhood level aggregated projects?
Yeah, great question. And we don't have anything similar to what Geof described, although it's a great area for us to continue to look at. We've been really focusing our aggregation more broadly across our community, so not a specific neighborhood necessarily, but for example, we have several programs that target disadvantaged communities throughout our service territory. But I think it's an interesting area to explore, and we'll definitely do so.
Thank you. Okay, question back for Anarosa. Anarosa, you mentioned how the investor-owned utilities are doing really well with long-standing standards especially for their workers, I think. And we know that the investor-owned utilities have been around for a long time, so some of those benefits that they enjoy are the result of decades of collective agencies. But you might not be able to do this in the moment, but are there examples that you can provide, or can you say more about the degree to which the investor-owned utilities are doing? I think the word in your slide was impeccable, but doing a great job on those, on those standards. I think especially for me, I'd be more curious about the communities because I think some communities have not necessarily benefited so much, and maybe explain what you mean by, some of the communities that have been benefiting from high, standards.
So I'm having a lot of trouble hearing you, Woody. I don't know if anybody else is getting it. So some of it was kind of choppy. I'm not sure if I fully get your question, but I mean, nobody's doing perfect. Let's get that straight. There's so much work to be done with communities and properly engaging them in their own languages. For example, I'll give you the area that I'm in, for example. When there is translation offered, it's offered in Spanish, but a lot of our folks actually speak indigenous languages because we live in a large farm worker population that's from Oaxaca. So like Mixteco, Zapoteco, Triqui, and that's never offered. So when you actually get into the details, let me be clear that there's not enough engagement. So I would say I gave them a little bit too much credit in that slide, and there's still a lot of work for all of us to do, not only the utilities, but all of us in our different community organizations, in our unions, in the places that we work. So I would say there's a lot still left to be desired, but at least as far as representing workers' rights, that is something that they're more ahead in. So I think that is a more accurate depiction.
Thank you, and sorry if there are audio issues. I hope you can hear me. I will go ahead and ask this one. Regarding, this is for Geof and Joanne again, regarding the programs that encourage behavioral changes. Right now, a lot of them, as the ones Geof described, require customers to take action. The ones that you, Joanne, described, you've got some automation underway, but that requires, I guess, smart appliances. I guess the question is, what, is that the deal breaker for moving forward on automated grid flexibility? The appliances must be equipped to respond to signals and such. What are the other obstacles to having automated grid flexibility on the demand side?
Yeah, why don't I let Geof go first this time, and then I can fill in the gaps.
Okay. So a lot of what's happening, so you've outlined that there's two kind of directions to go with load management. One is behavioral, I'll call it that category, which is people doing things. So they're getting an alert somehow, and then they're turning things on and off. And the other is automated, and that's usually on a Wi-Fi signal today. One of the big challenges that's not very well understood is when you have automated appliances on Wi-Fi, once in a while, they lose the connection. They go back to their factory defaults, which are not good for California. And they optimize to try and maximize load at 7 p.m., which is exactly when we don't want them to be doing. This is very common for heat pump water heaters, and it is a serious problem. And it means that the people who have these appliances have to keep constantly rechecking if they're connected. So I'm going to generalize my comment I just made and say it's CCA's job to call out the industry when the industry isn't working. Just like when all the Tesla batteries in our first extreme heat wave that we had 4 years ago started charging immediately when the grid was going into sensitive mode. They screwed up. They went into charge mode instead of discharge mode. We all called them out on that, and they fixed it. And I think that's what we have to do when it comes to things like virtual power plants and load management, is be really, really candid about what's working and what isn't. And so, for example, why are we using Wi-Fi? Why not an AM radio signal that actually has much more reliable kind of dispatch? Or why are we requiring wireless connection at all? Why aren't we having a fixed clock that gets adjusted, so that you actually just have a schedule? There's a lot of tools for that, and I don't profess to actually know what the right answer is, but we all need to be thinking about that and turning it into a solution that makes sense. Another thing that is not widely known is most loads should not be dispatched. They should be permanently scheduled. So things like car charging and water heating are not part of virtual power plants because they should never be charging during peak periods. They should never be utilized. They should constantly be all the time running on a time clock. And so that really narrows down what you can use on a signal, on a dispatch, which is one reason why we've focused very strongly on behavioral dispatch, which requires no technology and no money. And you get to choose what you can turn on and off. Are you running your laundry and your dishwasher at a peak period or not? Like that's your choice. And you just get paid when you do something that lowers load. So I'll leave it there. Over to you, Joanne.
Yeah, no, great points. You touched on most of what I was going to cover. So, one other, Woody, I think you were asking about barriers. We certainly have the technology barrier, the availability of certain type of equipment, the access to these type of advanced devices to a lot of our community. But in general, one of the biggest challenges we face is just getting customers engaged and aware that they can be part of the solution. I think people assume that if they don't have some fancy device, that means that they can't participate, that means that they can't be, part of the process. And so, I really do think behavioral demand response, as Geof mentioned, is a big part of the solution, because everyone has the ability to engage there. And, we have the data and systems be able to track what they're doing and reward them specifically for their actions. So, while I think automation certainly has its place, I think the more we can do to build out the kind of customer-driven aspect of these changes, the better off we all are.
Very good, thank you. Okay, back over to Ana Rosa with a question from attendee Monica Shapiro. Can you describe a little bit what one of the campaigns that you mentioned looks like? What do you actually do in your campaigns to approach the CCAs about the standards?
Well, if you'd like to ever join, we meet every other Wednesday at 9 a.m. It's labor unions, it's environmental organizations, it's community organizations, and we get together and talk about what the goals are for any particular campaign. And so as far as doing a whole case study, we probably don't have the time to go into a full case study of a campaign, but I would say that we talk with the leaders involved about why this is an important issue. And when we sense hesitation, we have delegations talk to folks in case they do have more questions, and then showing up to meetings, public meetings, and speaking out about the importance of these policies. I would say that's a brief synopsis of how we go through it. And it's always about listening to each other and staying in communication, and just being open to each other. And I think that that's what we have to continue to do in this movement, is continue to listen to each other, because to advance any of these large goals that we have, we need to stay together. And in order to stay together, we have to have really solid communication with each other. So I would say that that's the key of every campaign that we've had.
Well, thank you. All right, we have from attendee Claire Broom. For this one's directed to Geof. What programs have been most successful in expanding distribution, grid generation, and storage, including grid side of the meter projects? What barriers have you experienced? Are there any way that community choice programs can alleviate constrained circuits that translate into savings for customers?
So I think California is moving down that path a little, but there are a lot of technical answers to this question. So I'll see if I can pull this up to a more broad audience. There are a lot of rules that are in place today to protect profits or to prevent work from being transferred from one union to another. And that is not always in a community's benefit. And so, for example, if a community wants to build something on the utility side of the meter that is absolutely in the community's benefit and would benefit air quality or climate or both, or costs, that's generally not allowed today. That's generally illegal because there is a monopoly on that work that is controlled by a for-profit company. And so taking that on is really challenging for California, because it means the work would get transferred from the utilities union to a local union. And that's essentially a non-starter, because the utilities union has more money, has more political power. So that's not really currently an option. Like, community power is essentially illegal in California. And that's not something that I've taken on, because it's such a difficult task to overcome. So I want to crowdsource that and see if there's a deal that could be cut somehow where community power could become an easier thing. When a grassroots community wants to do something, that it becomes allowable. Some of the success stories have been in our local solar movement with rooftop solar, the increasing prevalence and somewhat increasing affordability of battery storage, although that's still got a ways to go. And in the codes that have mandated solar power, for example, in new construction. And I think that success story could be significantly furthered if we took on small technical problems. So here's one example. I'll keep this as brief as I can. It would be possible to eliminate all of the delays and expense of applying for an interconnection permit if the underwriter's laboratory had a standard that said, when you buy a system, solar, batteries, vehicle to grid, whatever it might be, it must comply with a certain protocol that when the grid goes down, your system goes down. So it provides safety for workers. And in addition, the first person on the block to buy a system has first right to flow onto the grid. That kind of technology already exists today. We use it in lighting systems and HVAC systems all over the place. And that would eliminate a very long delay of applying for an interconnection permit, which is that delay is growing. And it would reduce the cost of community owned power, whether it's individually owned on a customer side of the meter or whether it's community owned. So those kind of solutions are politically hard, but they're technically simple. So I just want to like share those two ideas.
Oops, you cut off again right before you were finished speaking again for me. I don't know if that happened with everyone, but
I think it's just on your end, Woody.
Just
We're
about to
getting some
conclude, I
audio
think.
stuff on your end. Yeah. But you're in charge now.
Okay, well, sorry about that. Joanne, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Okay, let's see. Where is my question slide? All right. Hoping folks can hear me. There's a question from Dave S. around where the conversation is with the operating CCAs on pathways to meeting their 100% clean energy procurement goals, presumably 100% round the clock, particularly at periods of grid usage that are usually pretty dirty and quote unquote peaky. Who'd like to?
I can take it, but Joanne, do you want to? So this is a very complex question. And it's very astute. One of the things that I'll offer that I think will be news to a lot of people is the difficult period to solve for renewable energy is no longer summer evenings. More or less, solar combined with batteries and a little bit of load management is going to solve that problem within 5 years. Like we're really not going to have summer evening problems. However, all winter long and at 4 or 5 a.m., the batteries are empty, solar's not running as much, wind may not be running, and there isn't enough of all that combined. And so the future of getting to 100%, especially after Becker's bill 2 years ago passed, which requires an hourly accounting starting in 2028, not a net accounting on an annual basis, is going to require things like offshore wind, geothermal, pumped hydro, and transmission to Wyoming and New Mexico for other resources that happen at a different time of day. You literally can't do it without those resources. It's just not possible. And the sad part about that is we're going to sustain every single natural gas fracking system, every single natural gas pipeline, every single natural gas power plant is going to stay online until we solve that problem. And we're going to all be paying for that. So it's like one of these conundrums of having to figure out resources that run in the winter and at night as an enabling tool. And so it's what keeps me up at night. Let me put it that way.
All right, well, okay, I hope it can be resolved because we don't want you losing sleep, Jeff. We're probably going to have to leave it there because we're coming down to the last few minutes, and I want to reiterate our call to action and whatnot. But are there any concluding comments from any of you presenters that you didn't have a chance to speak to that are super important you want all our attendees to hear? Final closing comments real quick. All right, well, I just want to thank all of you presenters, and Julian, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, attendees. I am going to share my screen again. There it is. And put up here, if you can see it. Okay. Let's go going on here? Can you see my screen? Folks, see my screen?
No, Woody.
It's
No?
showing you. Your screen is showing you.
Oh, wait, what's going, oh, here it is, sorry. Now it should show. How about now?
Yep.
Okay, I see a nodding head. So everybody, attendees, this is your second chance here to endorse the Climate Safe California campaign. Join over 2,000 individuals, NGOs, and elected officials and others in endorsing our campaign. It's very important to be able to take this message to the state's leaders, the governor, and the legislature to let them know that people want an accelerated climate action. And our call to action on the budget coming up, deadline June 15th, to get oil and gas subsidies out of the picture so that we can free up hundreds of millions of dollars for climate priorities. And with that, that concludes. So Rob is dropping those links into the chat again. I just want to thank all of our sponsors, our promotional partners, presenters, attendees, and our webinar staff team for putting together this webinar. And with that, at 11:29 a.m., I give you back 1 minute of your day, and thanks again for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have everybody here. Thank you.
Thank you.